Aloha, my loves, and welcome back to Soulful Wahine. In today's episode, I'm going to be diving into the topic of toxic love. I'm going to be touching on how we can break cycles and how we can begin to choose ourselves. Today, I'm not just going to be talking about breakups. Okay, like I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how we can begin to break cycles. Because what a lot of people don't realize is toxic love doesn't just hurt our heart or hurt our emotions. Okay. Over time, it can actually rewire your nervous system. And that is one of the main reasons as why many of us can have a hard time leaving these kinds of relationships. Before I dive into this topic, I want to just make space and touch on why I'm making this episode. If you've been interacting with me over on Instagram, then you know that this is a topic that has been requested multiple times and has just come up a lot of times for a lot of the women that have been following me. And so I just wanted to make space to be able to talk about this topic because I feel like for many of us, we were never taught about toxic love or about unhealthy love or unhealthy habits in love. Okay. And by the end of today's episode, my goal is that you'll be able to walk away understanding why toxic love can be so addictive, how we can spot it early on, and what it means to begin to choose yourself unapologetically. So, why do we mistake toxic love for real love? Okay, this is something that I constantly hear from a lot of the women and men that I work with. And so, one reason is that trauma bonds create a false sense of connection. Another reason is if you grew up with inconsistent love or if you grew up watching inconsistent love, chaos can feel familiar to you. And sometimes chaos can even feel safe. One thing I want to throw out there is, high highs and low lows, they can mimic passion. However, real love does not require emotional survival mode. Okay? And a lot of times we confuse chemistry with compatibility, meaning that just because the spark is strong, that doesn't necessarily mean that the foundation is always healthy. And a lot of times, early red flags get overlooked because of love bombing and emotional highs. Oh, I don't know what it is, guys, but it's like as I'm going through this, through like my slide decks, I am finding myself like out of breath, like I'm having a physical reaction to these slides, and I I can't pinpoint what it is. But we're gonna keep it pushing. So, for the sake of today's conversation, I want to define trauma bonds, okay? Because I just mentioned it, and I know that trauma bond, that phrase is kind of like a buzzword nowadays. It's thrown around a lot. And I know that even though it's thrown around a lot, not many of us might actually know what the definition of trauma bond is. So, a trauma bond is an unhealthy attachment that forms between a person and someone who repeatedly harms, manipulates, or mistreats them. And trauma bonds develop through cycles of abuse and reward, meaning what will happen is there will be an event that will cause hurt or pain. It will be followed up by an apology. There will be affection. And then we kind of get back into that cycle of there being an event that causes hurt or pain. And so, like I said, it becomes a cycle, okay, where it becomes hurt, apology, affection, and then hurt again. So, trauma bond comes from that cycle. The highs and lows confuse our nervous systems, making the bond feel like love, when actually it could really be things such as control and dependency. Over time, it can become harder to leave because our brains begin to connect pain with connection. And I want to provide clarification on trauma bonds because there is a difference between trauma bonding or like having a trauma bond and bonding with someone through shared trauma. So, again, a trauma bond happens when a person becomes emotionally attached to someone who hurts, manipulates, or mistreats them. And again, that cycle is present, the cycle of abuse, apology, affection, abuse again, or hurt, apology, affection, and then hurt again. Okay? So when it comes to trauma bonds, that cycle has to be present. Bonding through shared trauma, that typically happens when two or more people, go through something painful together. You experience a loss, you go through an accident, abuse, or even a disaster are some examples. Okay. And even though you can form a deep attachment through shared trauma, it only becomes trauma bonding if the relationship itself is harmful and that cycle is present. So I just want to clarify because, again, trauma bonding or trauma bonds is a very buzzword type of thing out right now. And I just want to provide clarification on that. What are some red flags or even just signs that you might be in a toxic love cycle? First one is you live on an emotional roller coaster. Again, high highs and low lows. Good days feel amazing, and bad days honestly feel devastating and maybe even sometimes scary. Apologies don't match behaviors, meaning patterns continue to repeat. Love feels conditional. Affection is only given when you please them or when you meet their needs. You may feel more anxious than secure in the relationship. You walk on eggshells and or you shrink who you are in order to avoid conflict. You start losing yourself, so hobbies, friendships, and over time confidence begin to fade. Disagreements become personal attacks and not really problem solving conversations. I want to touch on now why it feels impossible to walk away or why we stay, even if we recognize that these things are happening. One that I hear a lot is there's hope for change, holding on to the good moments, like in more good moments than there's been bad. Another one is the addiction cycle. Again, that reward for making up. Those moments flood your brain with dopamine and it can keep you hooked. Another one that I constantly hear is a fear of loneliness or just the idea of starting over can feel more overwhelming than the idea of staying. Your nervous system gets used to chaos, and so it makes peace feel foreign or boring. And attachment wounds begin to whisper to us, like maybe if I can fix them, I'll finally be enough. Some other reasons why we choose to stay is society normalizes that ride or die loyalty, even when it's destroying us or even when the relationship is abusive. Trauma bonds, again, confusing intensity with love, low self worth, or even just beliefs that you deserve this or that you are not worthy of a safe and healthy type of love. Maybe there's some cultural or family pressure to stay and make it work. I know that for a lot of us, especially in the Polynesian culture, we can relate to this one. There's a lot of people that I personally know that when they got pregnant out of wedlock, a lot of them were kind of forced to marry their partners, in order to kind of save face. And while some of those relationships, have turned into beautiful, flourishing families, there's also been a lot of broken homes created from things like that. Before I move on, if anything that I am saying is resonating for you or it's bringing up any emotions, take some time and do some self-care, okay? Do some deep breathing, do some grounding exercises. And ultimately, if you need to, sis, step away. Do whatever is best for you. But if anything is coming up for you right now, or if things are really hitting home for you, I just ask that you show yourself compassion and empathy rather than judgment or shame. I know it's easier said than done, but that's what we're doing on this journey is we're learning how to swap out, judgment and shaming ourselves with compassion and understanding and empathy. Now that we've touched on red flags, I want to touch on green flags, or I want to touch on what healthy love can feel like. There's consistency, meaning you know where you stand with each other, even on rough or bad days. There's emotional safety. You can share your feelings and your thoughts without fear of punishment. Peace feels normal and not really suspicious. There's mutual respect, meaning that differences do not become weapons in arguments, and we're not taking low blows. There's supportive growth, meaning that they celebrate your wins and not compete with them. And you feel more like yourself, not less than, whenever you're with them. Some more green flags is that you feel safe being your full self with them. There's no shrinking and there's no masking. Accountability is mutual and not one-sided. And lastly, love feels steady and peaceful and not like a roller coaster, just full of ups and downs and ups and downs. I want to start to shift the conversation now into how do we begin to choose ourselves, or how do we begin to put ourselves first? And I want to throw out there that choosing yourself is not selfish. It's actually the foundation of self-respect. And I know that for a lot of us women of color, the idea of choosing ourselves, like I said, it feels really selfish. And so I'm here to remind you, it's not selfish. It's actually necessary. Okay? And again, in moderation. I'm not telling you to take things so far, that all we're thinking about is ourselves. No, but we have to start choosing ourselves and telling ourselves that it is okay to put ourselves first. When I say self-love is not just affirmations and bubble baths, okay? It's hard conversations. It's setting and holding boundaries. And it's walking away when needed. Every relationship that you accept is a reflection of what you believe you deserve. If that stirs anything up for you, as always, sit with that. Approach it with curiosity. Find out more about it. And when you stop tolerating disrespect, your standards rise. And so does the quality of love that you attract. And I just want to throw out there, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow. Here are some 3 self-love habits that you can begin to throw into your routine to begin on that journey of learning how to choose yourself first. So first one is having boundaries without guilt. So saying no to protect your peace, even if it disappoints others. Again, I know that this one in particular will be hard for my Black and brown girlies because a lot of us come from cultures, if not all of us come from cultures where we are meant to be self-sacrificing. We are meant to put everyone else before us. And while that is great, it is time that we start setting boundaries for ourselves because we deserve it. Next concept is solo joy, meaning building a life so full that you're not even tempted to settle for less than what you deserve. Number 3, figuring out what your non-negotiables are, defining your standards and refusing to bend them for temporary feelings. I always give a values exercise to my clients, and the exercise is pretty simple. Just think of 3 values that you want to begin applying to your relationships. But the twist is when I say values, I want you to begin to think of these as things that you are not willing to compromise. Okay? So for example, one thing that I hear a lot is respect. Okay, so if you are not willing to compromise respect in your relationships, what does that look like? And how do we begin to attain that? This exercise typically takes my clients a very long time because one, a lot of the times they see how much we actually are compromising our values. 2, how hard it can be to not compromise our values. And 3, it kind of shines a light on any relationships that we are compromising those values in. So I am going to say that if you are going to try this specific exercise out, please do it with care and grace. okay? As it definitely can bring up some emotions. Lastly, I want to give out a bonus tip, doing some mirror work, speaking to yourself like someone that you deeply love. A lot of my clients hate when I give them affirmations as homework, but if there's one thing I've learned as a therapist, that shit works, guys. As corny as it works. And so if you're up to it, if you're someone that responds well to affirmations, a bonus habit that you can try out is doing mirror work. If you struggle with mirror work, like I said, speak to yourself like someone that you deeply love. So if you were looking at someone like your best friend or your mom or your grandma or someone that you truly admire, what are things that you would say to them and how would you say it? Okay? Now, let's shift into how do we begin to heal from toxic love? Therapy or coaching? Untangle and learn the patterns that are keeping you drawn to the type of person that is giving you this wrong or unhealthy love. Do daily self check ins. Ask yourself, am I honoring myself today? Am I honoring my values? Or am I compromising them? And if so, what can I do about it? Next one is very, very big. You have to forgive yourself. You have to extend grace. Like I touched on last week, having awareness without giving yourself grace is just kind of setting yourself up to beat yourself up. And when it comes to healing from toxic love, you have to forgive yourself for the times that maybe you stayed longer than you should have. And for me, I don't even like saying that word should because I don't know, me personally, the word should is such an ugly fucking word. And yeah, I don't know. But again, show yourself grace, forgive yourself. When you are reflecting and looking back, don't beat yourself up, but rather try to extend compassion and empathy for the reasons why we did stay. Like I mentioned last week, healing requires compassion and empathy, not shame. And lastly, reconnect with you, meaning reach back out to the friends that made you feel like who you were or reminded you of who you were. Get back into the hobbies and the passions that you let go of during that relationship. As we close this episode out, I just want to remind you that you are not hard to love. You have just been giving the best of you to people who can't meet you there. And real love will not make you abandon yourself in order to keep it. It's okay to choose peace. It's okay to choose joy. And it's okay to choose yourself, sis. Or bro. Because, I got my canes up in here. But it's okay to choose yourself. And if this resonated with you, or if anyone came to mind for you while you were listening in on this episode, please share it with them and remind them to begin and approach this journey with love, compassion, and understanding, and not shame and judgment. Please stay close because these next few weeks of Soulful Wahine, I really, really want to release content and episodes that are very deep and meaningful. Follow me on IG. Come interact with me. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Let me know if it resonated, and let's continue the conversation there. I'll see you folks next week, okay? And as always, mahalo and aloha.